Welcome to On the Edge with April Mahoney Brains. Here, this is the spot where the conversation is pointed, the guests are sharp, and the responses are never dull. Welcome home, Brains. There's only one requirement to hang out on the edge, is that you open your big brain and close your small mind. Did you bring your thinking caps? It's time to put them on, because the conversation starts now. Welcome to On the Edge with April Mahoney. Good afternoon, Brains. How are you doing? Are you working towards your highest and greatest good? Because we're counting on you. This is a place where the conversation is pointed and the guest, there she is, are sharp. The responses are never dull. We're going to talk to Sandra Sigfusson. She is an author. Oh, I love authors. They're so creative. They're storytellers. They're innovators, they're Imaginarians. They can just really transport you into another place and time. And we're going to talk to her about that. But she also has another gift. Sovis nominated her for an audiobook. She produced it. She's an author. She likes to write romance. Who doesn't like a good romance novel? We're going to ask her about her inspiration and her insight. So I'm excited to have her here on the show. How are you doing today, Sandra?
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me. I think this is going to be a lot of fun to chit chat.
It is going to be fun because I'm an author too. And it's like giving birth.
Yeah, I guess in a way it's a birth of your ideas. Sure.
It's a birth, and then you have to push it through and you have to cradle it, nurture it, and sell it through. And talk a little bit about that. Tell us a little bit about you, your story, your journey, and your history, and how you show up in the world.
Well, that's kind of a loaded question. I've been writing poetry and songs since I was like, teenager, 14, 15 years old. Always inspired by musicians. And I write here and there, but I've never written stories until I was like 55. That was the first time I sat down and decided to write something. And it was because I was watching a really cheesy romance movie on the TV. And it was so bad. I mean, I put up with a lot of really quirky, corny stuff just because I know going in that that's what it is, right? So you're not surprised by it and you just take it for what it is and enjoy it. Well, this one was just horrid. And it was like I had to watch it to the end just to see if there was some redeeming factor to it, which there wasn't. And I thought, good Lord, I think I could probably write something better than that in my sleep. And then I thought, okay, smarty pants, write a story. See if you can better that. And it wasn't a huge challenge because it was such a poorly written movie. So the challenge was quite small. Anyways, so I end up writing this story, which I had intended to be like a movie script, and I had worked in video production before, so I was familiar with scripts and that sort of thing. Anyways, long story short, I wrote a novel, and it was called Avalon. And then I didn't know what to do with it after that, so I found an editor in Canada, and we went through 5-6 edits easy on it before we were both happy with it being published. And so I thought, okay, well, that's it. I've published a book, whatever. And then I got an idea for another story and sat down and wrote that. So that was Mr. Magnificent. And
I need to buy that. That's what I call my husband, Mr. Magnificent. we need that book.
This one I am rewriting. I am changing the point of view. So it was written in third person, and now I'm changing it to first person. And then I'm also producing it in audiobook once that's done. So it's currently at the editor after I made all those adjustments. Anyway, so that just continued on. The stories just kind of fell out of me. I had so many ideas, and then I ended up with a new editor that I found on Twitter, Michael Dolan, and he's in New York. And he's fabulous. Him and I we clicked immediately. And so it was very easy to work with somebody when you have the same ideals and the same, like I trust him to take my story and say, okay, I really think that this could be elaborated on, or something's missing here. And I feel like we've skipped a beat, and you don't see that as you're writing it because
No, you
I'm
don't.
a pantser, so I don't plan anything out. I just, it comes into my head, I write it, and I say to myself, well, what if? And then I continue on the story. I tried drafting an outline once, and I still haven't written that book, and that was 6 years ago.
Hmm.
I if I draft it out, I messes with my mojo. My mojo is to just fly off by the seat of my pants.
Right, right,
It's,
right. But
it's my pretty woman moment. I just kind of go there.
you made a very valid point when you talked about the editor. And I tell people all the time, they want to write a book, but they want to play on the cheap when it comes to getting editor. And the
Yeah,
editor is not just the person that's going to dot your I's, cross your T's, and put in your comma. They're going to make sure that there's a flow. They're going to make sure that there's a plot. They're going to make sure that it's interesting. They're going to make
yeah,
sure that there's character development. There
right.
is going to be synchronicity, you know. So an
Exactly.
editor is key, and it's worth every single penny. And to find someone that hears your voice, that knows who you are. I mean, I'm an African American woman. When I write poetry, I'm sure that it's going to be different texture than when you write poetry. So there may be some different slang or idiosms or words that I might use that you might not use. But if you find someone that has no idea of who you are or what you're talking about, uh, they can change the whole thing, and it can turn out to be a nightmare. And you will have to go under 2 or 3 or 4 different edits before you find the one that is really soothing to your soul. How do
Yeah.
you pick your characters and character names?
That's a good question. A lot of times I kind of go through the alphabet in my head and I think of names that I feel like is relative to the story. So, for example, with The Irishman's Promise, I wanted to have names that were, well, she's American and he's the Irishman. So there are some Irish names, but I didn't go with the ones that are really difficult to pronounce. I know we
Right.
were talking about Icelandic words and names and stuff and Hawaiian names and stuff that are, you really tongue twisters. And I think a lot of Irish names are quite tongue twisting as well. And they're not pronounced the way they're spelt. So that makes it also difficult. So I didn't want to go that deep. And I kept it as simple as possible. So his name is Aiden. Her name is Elise. And so I kept the names quite simple. And I do that on purpose with most of my stories because I don't want people struggling to announce their names.
Right. That
But
can be a turnoff.
I can. But there is one caveat. So the book that I'm rewriting right now, which was Mr. Magnificent, it's currently retitled as Wild Orchids. And the main character in that book, her name is Liv, but it's spelt Liv.
Hmm.
So what it is that's the Scandinavian pronunciation of her name. So I think a lot of people will read it as Liv, but at the beginning of the novel, I have pointed out that her name is supposed to be pronounced Leave. And I know that when I do the script for the narrators to read, I'm going to change her name in that script to Leev so that they consistently remember her
Right.
name the way it's supposed to be pronounced. But that's really the only time I've ever had a name where I needed somebody to pronounce it differently than the way it's spelled. And so that's a bit of a risk. But they'll hear that in the audiobook.
Are
They
you
can
a
read it
hopeless
however they
romantic?
want in the written novel, that's for sure.
Are you a
Sorry,
hopeless
say again.
romantic? Are you in love with love? Is that why you picked that particular genre?
I am a romantic, yes. I'm very sentimental. So I one of those people that, basically hoards things that somebody gave me. I may not necessarily like it. It's not something I would have bought for myself, but because they gifted it to me, I
Mm.
feel obligated to keep it and display it somewhere. So to me, that's a romantic notion in a way. I care that they took the time to pick that item out for me and gift it to me. So even though I may not have bought that for myself, it still needs to be on display. It still needs to be respected.
Right.
And so that's how I feel about things. And I do fall in love very easily with people. Um, and I do love to connect with people. Um, but I'm not as outgoing as I used to be, though. I think it's just an age thing. You
No,
know,
yeah, yeah,
the
no.
older you get, the more you're
I
like,
don't know if it's an age thing. I am not as I'm still very social because of the work that I do,
yeah,
but we live a very private life. I can tell you who knocks on my door.
yeah,
I prefer that. I've had all of that existential stuff,
yeah.
the parties and the this and the people and all that, and sometimes I don't find the value in it. It's more of a annoyance.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I find that I don't drink alcohol anywhere near as much as I used to. I really couldn't be bothered.
Yeah.
Like there's no alcohol out there that has my name written on it that I will always drink every single time. Can't go anywhere without it. That's not me. But then my problem is I come from a long line of alcoholics, and so I've always been cognizant of becoming another one of them in the family. And so alcohol to me has always been, except when I was really young, when you first start drinking, you
Right,
make all
right,
the
right.
mistakes, you
I don't
pass
like the
out.
way it
And
makes me feel. I
no, the hangovers. I'm so done
champagne.
with the hangovers.
I got a girlfriend that, honey, she lives for the champagne. I
Yeah.
said, can you throw a little 7 Up in that? Can you throw a little orange juice and
Yeah.
apple juice in mine? Gives me a headache. Wine,
Yeah.
the tannins in the wine, it doesn't suit me.
Yeah.
But you know what? Give me a good tequila, a real
Yeah.
good tequila or a real good vodka. I'm your girl. I'll party with you for a minute. So
Yeah.
when you go into your hibernation, to your place where you want to be creative, what ignites your passion for writing?
I like the idea of creating a world or a universe that I don't know already exists.
Mm.
But I use real places. So, for example, with The Irishman's Promise, this is the one we've been talking about.
So, Sandra, where do you go for inspiration for your books?
That's a good question. A lot of times I get an inspiration from a song lyric for
Mm.
a story. Sometimes I will get just I'll be watching a movie and somebody will say something one of the books I recently wrote a story. It's a short story and it's actually a parable, like a paranormal parable. And I don't normally write in that genre. However, I was watching a movie and somebody referred to a graveyard as a bone garden. And so I thought, well, that's really interesting. I really like the way he put that. It's kind of tongue in cheek, but um, I thought there's a story there. So I wrote a story called The Bone Gardener. And,
Mm.
and yeah, anyways, so that sort of thing. And then my girlfriend has a doll collection, and I know a lot of people think of doll collections as creepy, but these are quite lovely. They're porcelain, they got the beautiful gowns, they're historical, so on and so forth. And she's got them in this lovely display case. But I thought, what if we went creepy with that? And so I wrote a story called The Keeper of the Dolls, and that book and The Bone Gardener are combined together as two short stories or two novellas. Um, and again, that's paranormal, and it's that one's a bit of a more on the thriller side. So, you know, that just shows you that inspiration comes from different things, and you end up in different places because
Right,
of those
right.
inspirations. And it depends on your mood. Sometimes you are ready to just say, I'm feeling creative, and maybe that's if you're feeling creative, you're more open minded to the suggestions, and then they come easier. So yeah, a lot of
Do you,
ways.
do you write every day?
No, no, I don't. If I'm in the middle of a story and I'm really involved in it, then yes, I will probably continue for like a week straight and continue writing. But sometimes I have to stop because being a pantser, like I said, you kind of lose track of the story. And so you have to go back, read what you've written and say, okay, what am I missing? Did I connect that to that properly? And is there some way that I can smooth that into the next section of the book,
Right.
the way I want the story told? And how am I going to end this? So, so yeah, there is times where I have to literally pause and say, where am I? What am I doing? So I mean, I don't
Exactly.
have a people map it out. What do they call that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, a draft. They don't have a
Draft.
draft
You don't have
laid
to
out.
draft
Yeah,
it
I
out.
don't I
Right,
don't do
right.
that. So
Oh, okay.
um So sometimes, yeah, my pants on
Or
fire, and other
they'll
times
create
I'm
storyboards. That
lollygagging
would be
and
me. I would be the person that if I wrote something, I'm going to write another book, but it's not going to be about that. I wrote a great story,
Mhm.
and I had some friends of mine all pick a character, and we were going to do it as a podcast.
Yeah,
Read it out, and it was during COVID, and it was about COVID.
right.
It was incredible, and it just fell under the radar. I think I might revisit that because it was one heck of a story. Um,
Yeah.
creating and the content and the location, it was great. You mentioned something that's very, very popular is novellas. They're
Yeah.
selling like you wouldn't believe. I mean, people like it short, sweet. It takes a lot though to be able to condense a whole story into what is a novella? 150 pages on average.
Yeah, I think there's a word count that's associated with a novella,
Oh, okay.
just as short stories and stuff, and I think it's 15,000 words or more.
Okay.
Um, or is it 2,500?
Okay.
Actually,
I don't know.
I write until I'm done. So it's most of my books are in the 70 to 80,000 word count. And so short stories and novellas are not typical for me,
Mhm.
but I have written them. So I do have an anthology, for example, called what is it called? Attempted. Sorry,
Okay.
brain fart there. And that's a 4 short story erotica,
Oh,
and so that's
okay.
an example of some of the short stories I've written. But I don't typically do that. Typically I am a novelist. I write a full novel, and they're all independent. I don't do series.
How many novels have you written?
I've written 14 or 15 of them, but I've only published
Really?
12. Yeah.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Then there's a passion there. There's a passion there. When you were a child, did you like to write stories?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I had a very vivid imagination. But I didn't write them out. Like I said, I kind of expressed them into poetry and song lyrics.
Okay.
So it wasn't writing stories. And as a kid, I really struggled to read books. I didn't have the attention span. It was like you know, what do they say? The attention span of the gnat. That was me. I was just spinny. My mind was here, 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 whatever caught my attention, like driving down the highway. Oh, cows, moo, that was me as a kid. So it wasn't until I was probably, 20 where I started to actually buy paperback books and sit on the bus and read them on the way to work.
Right.
So, um, and that's when I realized I could focus my time on a story and read it. So even Cole's notes, and that's what we used to call them. I think they're called something else now, where they're the truncated version of the stories that you're supposed to read in school and then write
Right.
reports on and such.
Right.
Yeah, I couldn't even get through those. And they were
Mhm.
truncated versions of those stories, right? So, yeah. So if my
There used to be a
English
catalog.
teachers could see me now, they'd be probably rolling in their graves because I'm sure they're all dead at this point.
There
But
was a catalog that
um,
came out in school because I had trouble, I had a reading challenge. I was
yeah,
dyslexic. And still to this day, at 63, I transpose letters when I spell and all that. It was a different learning style. And once I was able to master that,
yeah,
I started writing poetry. Poetry was my friend because the words would rhyme. And then Dr. Zeus,
yes,
and I started entering contests and I was winning, right on magazine. And there was a catalog that used to come out in school. Was it Reading Rabbit or
yep, that's the one. Yep.
yeah. And I tell you, I couldn't wait to get my $10 because I would buy those books. And it was so exciting, number one, to order it, to look forward to it when it came, and I would actually
Yeah,
read the books. And
yeah,
one of the things that really sparked my interest and made me a much better reader was Newsweek.
really.
Out of all the periodicals in the world, I really enjoyed reading Newsweek. And I guess that's why I became, the person that I am as far as world issues. I'm not into politics too much.
Yeah, yeah,
I stay abreast, but that's not really my zone of genius. But world issues and finance and all of that. So you never know where your child is going to find it. Some find it in comic books.
yeah.
uh, a lot of children
Graphic
tell their
novels. Yeah,
stories, or if they have trauma, they tell it through storytelling and book writing. So that's very important. So thank you
yeah.
so much for sharing that. You're also going to share with us a little excerpt from one of your books. Lead us into that. Tell us a little bit about that, and we want to hear what it's about.
Right. So The Irishman's Promise, which is the one we've been discussing, it's set in Ireland, and her love interest is the Irishman. Now she shows up into Ireland just to visit her mom. She's taking a hiatus from work. She's a journalist, and she's taken a hiatus. She just broken up with a man that she's been in a long-term relationship with, and she just kind of rebooting herself and figures if she escapes for a little bit, hangs out with her mom, who is an expat, had moved to Ireland in a few years prior, that she'll find her ground again, and then, you know, boots on the ground. So she meets this Irishman, and he's salty. He is a bit jaded. He's kind of the black sheep of the village, and he's just recently returned after a self-imposed exile because of all the talk in the town. It's a very small village, and it's on the coast. So um, that's kind of the lead up to it. So now at this point, they've decided that they're going to be friends, and um, and they're kind of ignoring the fact that they are madly in love with each other, but they need to be friends for now. So this is chapter 7, and this is Aidan's perspective. And he says, our faces, stern and unyielding, mirror the inflection of her lying words as we stare at each other eye to eye. She could never truly hate me, nor could I her. She comes one step closer, as if to dare me. I crush the impending smile my lips beg to release with the will of the whipping wind at my back, knowing full well I've ruffled those pretty feathers of hers yet again. She'll not win this staring contest we found ourselves in, that much I guarantee. I stare deeper into her soul while my hand grasps at her hair, wildly swirling about her lovely face. She will not win, I tell myself again. I realize I've already lost, and perhaps that's why I keep telling myself to try harder. My hair is fine. Leave it be, Aidan, she says as her hand reaches to grab my forearm. I don't understand you sometimes, and I hate that about you. You hate that about yourself, and you think yourself strong enough to actually hate me, do you now? This is another word, pardon me, is there another word for hate? Something Gaelic, something with a thick brogue that spews dissent, she says. Aye, there is, but what would be the point in you hating myself in a second language when one is quite enough, yeah? That comment breaks her spirited mood, and she smiles and tries to hold back her laughter. This is the moment that I have to show her how strong I am, show her how much this thing we do from time to time, snide remark to clever retort, does to me. They say love and hate are equally strong emotions, and in so many previous moments like this, I teeter from one to the other because I hate that I love her. I'm not meant to love her or anyone else. That moment, sorry, that the moment that my feelings get away with me, my head tilts to the left as I grasp the back of her head and hold her still while I devour her lips with mine. It was her laughter. It was always her laughter that stops myself. Full stop, like a skipped beat of a broken heart, of a strong.
Take your time.
I, I thought she'd fight me, but no. Her kiss has the same passionate heat of my own, and I have come to realize that her angry self, her short-tempered self, her playful self, is a magnificent kisser. In seconds, the passion goes from frigid to boil, with our hands ripping away at each other's clothes like they were alight. The only thing that separates our lips now is when I pull the sweater over her head. Elise thrills me like no other, and if I could hate myself for letting my sexual desires control my frustration over her sharp tongue, I would. But desire doesn't play nice. It knows no boundaries. It cares not about the rules, and now neither does myself. Our half-naked bodies are bitten by the bitterness in the late afternoon wind. I enclose Elise in my arms to shield her and nod my head to the direction of the neighboring barn 50 steps beside us. We gather our clothes from our feet while I throw my coat around her shivering body and run into the barn for shelter and warmth. The barn is not much warmer, but at least will keep the sudden blistering wind at bay. Crimson, which is the dog, scampers in behind us and sits at Elise's feet. After securing the door, I glance back over my shoulder to catch a glimpse of her fussing with her tousled hair and gripping her arms around herself with my coat. The cold is no match for a warm body, I remind her. Her smile, bashful as it is, surprises me. We are not in high school and are out on a first date. We're not driven by controllable urge to kiss each other for the first time, but it feels indeed like that same rush. I approach her to open the coat. um, and wrap my arms around her back while tugging her in close to me. You don't hate me enough to keep yourself warm, do you now? I hate that I've fallen in love with you, she whispers, and then slides her chilled arms around my waist. The fresh air scent of her hair calms me in a manner I'd not expected, but Elise is unexpected in many, many ways. My brows furrow when I think of what my chest feels like when I think of Elise. I stammer a bit when I decide to reveal what has kept me at a distance, regardless of the fact that I've concluded a month ago that I'd already fallen for her. But this business of my Da and Grace, which is her mother, getting engaged is thrown another unavoidable issue into the mix. Bollocks is all I can say to that.
Wow. I love excuse me, I love your use of words. They're
Thank
very
you.
colorful, they're very descriptive. Um, you can tell that maybe you use a thesaurus. People, well, yeah, and I mean that in a loving way. There's only so
Yeah,
many words that you can use or that you can retain in your own mind that fit, but it has to be a flow. And a lot of
yeah,
times people struggle with reading just in general because they can't pronounce a word. But if they
yeah.
look at the context of the word, the before and the after, the flow, that's where the comprehension comes in. And
Right,
so many
right.
so many children have problems with that. And the teacher will say, well, their comprehension isn't very good. Well, kind of help them with the context of what it is.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. I was a photographer and I prefer to photograph landscapes for many, many years prior to getting into the field of writing. So I think maybe my eye for landscapes and the
mhm,
wind and the way things move and the color of the sky, those sort of things. Those details are important to me because I needed those details to be important in order to take a good photograph.
mhm,
So maybe that's why I'm able to easily describe the bitterness of the wind, the way the grass is blowing back and
right.
forth, and the way the waves are crashing on a craggy rock. Um, so I think that's helpful.
It is.
That's a past thing that has been helpful to me to
Because you
describe.
have to transport the reader and they have to follow you. They have to use their
Yeah,
imagination. I
yeah.
just came from Ireland 2 weeks ago. And I
Wow.
see, yeah, and I see it and I feel it and I can taste it exactly what you're saying. And it's very vivid to me. So thank you for that.
Well,
Let
thank you.
me ask you a question. This is kind
Yeah,
of, I don't know, different. When you were reading, it's different when you're reading aloud and
yeah.
you are, caught kind of on the fly. But you had the
Because I'm
opportunity.
terrible at reading aloud. I could never be a narrator. You do these little videos and stuff for TikTok and that sort of thing. I have to do like 30 or 40 takes before I'm like, okay, I didn't mess this up so badly that it's okay to go public with it. It's, I'm terrible. It just,
But how
I
did
don't
you
know.
do the audio? How did you do the audiobook?
The audio, I hired narrators, professional narrators
Oh,
to read
okay.
for me. Yeah, I could never narrate my own story.
I know, and I have a girlfriend of mine that narrates books.
Hmm.
That's a certain skill, but
It is,
a
yes.
lot has to do with syncopation, taking your time and reading it slowly.
Yeah.
It's like when we're reading and I'm reading, we want to just hurry up and get through it. They
Yeah.
take their time, your voice inflection, you have to embody the character. It is
Yes.
actually an audible actor.
Yes, they are.
I do
That's why they're called voice actors,
Yeah, that's
because,
why
and a
I
lot of
do
them
a
have
lot of
theater backgrounds or television, movie backgrounds, and they have actually acted in films and television and such. Um, and where those things are, it's not just your face, right? I mean, on a screen, you can see their face, you can see that they're exasperated, angry, happy, whatever the situation may be, but it's also in their voice. So, and if they can parlay those expressions in their voice,
Mhm.
then that it makes you want to hear more from them. And I think that's why a lot of these voice actors have become quite popular, because to them it's just natural. They'll read what I just read, in a way that, like, I know what this audiobook sounds like. And maybe
Mm.
that's why I'm so critical of myself, because I know that Stephanie Nemeth Parker, who plays Elise, and Connor Craze, who is my Irishman. Both of them are very, very skilled voice actors, and there's no way that I could emulate that.
And that's could be a pretty pricey price tag.
Yeah, yeah. Audiobooks are between $5,000 and $7,000. And the problem with being a Canadian is my Canadian dollar is worth crap. So I'm paying 30%, sometimes 40% on top of whatever they're asking for their narration fees.
And
Um,
that's if they're American, but if you find someone that's Canadian.
yeah.
And then how do you market that? You go to, I'm a little bit familiar with it, but people that don't know. So you take the audio content and you send that to a
Um,
publisher or
audio exchange, it's ACX, audio creative exchange. So that's where you have an account there. That's free to upload. And then what that is it's owned by Audible. So Audible then takes that book that you've uploaded to ACX and adds it to their library. And then it's for sale. And it takes a week, 10 days, something like that for an audiobook to be accepted, approved, because they got to check the levels. They got to make sure everything is correct, because they're very specific about audio levels. Um, something not being
are
too
they
loud or
are they like Amazon with regards to content? Are they
how do you
on
mean?
the con? Well, I mean, there's certain genres of books that they may not approve. Are they pretty?
I've never had a problem with it. I'm not aware of any specific genre that they don't approve. Um,
Now, let me ask you a question
so,
as far as downloading and the sales.
yeah.
Give me a ballpark figure. You don't have to go into particulars or specifics, but on an average, it's what, $20 to download a book?
With Audible, I think if you're a member of their thing where you pay $15 a month US, you get one audiobook included in that, and then you pay for each audiobook, and they're typically around $15. Some of them are more towards the $30 range, but that would be something that is like a Stephen King novel, somebody that's very famous,
Mhm.
and there's a big demand for them. Then, the publishing house that's uploaded that audiobook is going to be charging more for it. But typically, someone like me, I mean, Audible, they don't allow me as an author and as the producer and the creator of that art piece, they don't allow me to decide how much the audiobook is worth. Their flat fee is $15.99 or whatever it is now.
Okay.
And whether I'm famous or not, that's the minimum price you're going to pay for an audiobook. Sometimes they have sales, but I'm also not allowed to create a sale on my audiobook for myself. It's
Mm.
very limited. They control everything, and you sign up for 7 years. You agree to have your
Wow.
book on their platform for 7 years. They have two options. You can either be exclusive or non-exclusive. If you're exclusive, it means that you can only sell your book through Amazon Audible. That's it.
Hmm. Hmm.
You cannot sell it on any other platform. So if you wanted to go wide, you have to change it to non-exclusive, and then you can, sell it to Joe Blow on whatever platform he's on,
Okay.
and that's fine, or sell from your own website for that matter. But
Now, what is it?
yeah,
What is the revenue that you obtain from that?
so I've gone non-exclusive because I'm going wide with all my books in both paperback, ebook, and audiobook formats. So that means that I get a much smaller percentage. So this is a much longer conversation than you want to get into. But
Yeah, but I mean, just
Audible
kind of
does
give me
not
the.
pay their authors well. They say you get 40%, but once they do all their deductions and blah blah blah, you end up with maybe 20%, 25%
Wow.
of the sale
Yeah.
price. So
Same with the books, the paperback books and Amazon.
yeah,
I just kind of wanted to touch on that because a lot of people now are really looking at the Audible and Kindle options. They
yeah,
don't want to print, they don't want to ship, they don't want to store, they don't want to, they don't want to get involved with the paper. Um, and I look at my library right now. I'm sitting here in my office and I'm looking at all these wonderful books that I've read one time. I'm
yeah,
not going to read them again. If they're signed, I'll keep them. Other than
yeah.
that, they're collecting dust. So people are really moving more towards audio, and they
Yeah.
can multitask. I was
Yes.
just listening to Atomic Habits and I was editing at the same time. So they're liking that option. But as far as, getting paid,
Yeah.
because people have to understand that, a publisher gets it ready and wraps it up. You
Yeah.
still have to market it and you still have to sell it through. And you can't get
Yeah.
bored with it.
No,
If
you're
you get
chief cook
bored
and
with it,
bottle washer. You are in control of everything, marketing, and so unless you're hiring somebody to do the marketing, which there's lots of wonderful people out there that do that, um, and I haven't hired anyone yet to do anything because I have a background in working with Photoshop and that sort of thing, and that is connected to my photography background.
mhm,
So I can create my own um, artwork, that sort of stuff, right? That's not hard for me. I do my own covers. Um, so the only thing I don't do is editing and I don't narrate.
okay,
I
all
do
right.
myself. And it's hard. There's not enough time in the day
No,
to be that chief cook and bottle washer. So at some point I'm going to have to bite the bullet and hire somebody and say, I need you to handle all the marketing because I can't write and focus on all that
right.
other stuff too. I'm
And
not
then
going to sell
and
any books by
sometimes
sitting here on my thumbs.
sometimes
Um,
you can, you need other cooks in the kitchen.
yeah,
You
yeah,
need a different perspective, you need a different
yeah,
angle, someone else, and that's their expertise. So I get
yeah,
that. So thank you so much for all of that wonderful information and for sharing that, because there's a lot of authors out there that can really use that information. But I want
yeah,
to ask you a couple quick questions
sure.
before we conclude. If you were not an author right now and you hadn't done marketing, what would you like to do as a career? What would have been your choice?
Mm, well, for years we've had a suite in our house and it's got very high ceilings. And being a photographer, I thought, and this was before we decided to rent it out, I thought it would make a great space for boudoir photography. And
Mm.
so that was a big interest for me. But we ended up, my mother became incapable of caring for herself. So we moved her into the suite and so on and so forth. So that never materialized, but probably that's what I would be doing
Oh, I have a
is
friend that
boudoir
does it.
photography.
Yeah,
Um,
and the boudoir photography is very liberating.
it is.
Not
I had
only
it done
sexy, but you.
myself, I mind you, I was quite young and I still had a good body and no wrinkles. But I still love that picture, and I have it hanging in my office. It's over in the corner there, mind you. You can't see it, but it's not risque. It's just simply me in some very sexy lingerie laying on a mirror with a boa. And it's done in the late 80s.
Mm.
Um, but it's still timeless. Like, you know, I
Yeah,
just can't remember. I can't believe I was that skinny.
I have some,
Every time I look at that, I'm like, who is that person? Because it's not me. Anyways,
but the camera helps you tell a story.
it does.
It brings out a different intimacy. It brings out a different romance. You find
Yeah,
yourself sexy. You see
yeah,
the truth because you're laying there and you're vulnerable.
yep,
You're exposed. You
yeah.
know,
But you don't have to be
can't.
completely
No,
naked
no,
in
no,
order
no,
to
no.
feel very
Scantily
sexy
clothed
and to
or
look
exactly,
incredibly tantalizing to whoever's going to appreciate the photograph when it's done.
absolutely.
So it's a lot about body posture. It's a lot about how you're dressed, and how you feel seductive in
Mhm.
front of that lens.
Absolutely,
So that's
absolutely.
the important part. And so I would never want to make anybody feel uncomfortable. It's whatever makes them feel sexy and will work for what the purpose of the photograph is to appease a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a husband,
Right.
an overseas lover. I don't care, where it's
Exactly.
going. I just
Exactly.
want you to walk away and say, that was a great experience. I was empowered and I feel really beautiful today.
That's
You know,
wonderful. If
yeah.
you were a appliance in the kitchen, Sandra, what appliance would you be?
Um, oh my Lord. Probably a microwave because I like to do things fast. And so if I can eat something, just get it in and get it out, then that would probably be it.
I'd be the air
Uh,
fryer.
would you?
Yeah, kind of same thing, but I like it kind of crispy and juicy. Uh, it's
That's
trendy,
funny.
easy to
Yep.
clean.
Yep.
I like the air fryer.
Yep.
You could time travel, go back to the past, stay here in the present, project to the future. Where would you end up landing?
If I could go to the past or the future, which one? Sorry.
Past, present, future.
Oh, past, I would go back to the 70s. I love the 70s.
Mm.
And future? Hmm, I don't know. I'm afraid of the future. I'm actually glad I don't have grandchildren right now.
Yeah, me too. Bless you.
Sorry, pardon me.
Go ahead. Take your time.
Hang on a second.
Yeah, get it.
Lord, hmm, have a sip of water.
Yeah, take your time. I can edit all that. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm glad I don't have grandchildren because I don't like the world right now. I think it's terrible. And I don't see the future as something positive to look forward to. I really don't.
Mm.
I don't like our governments, Canada or the States. So I have very little respect for what's going to happen in the future. And all this AI shit, sorry for the language.
Oh, that's okay.
I'm very against AI on almost every level. I
Really?
know it has some positive
Oh, a
uses,
lot.
but I don't think it's going to be used for positive. I think it's going to be used for evil on so
Hmm.
many levels. And
Wow.
it scares the pants off me. So I don't have any interest in the future whatsoever. And I don't see myself in the future being very happy. Um, and right now, if I could hop on a plane and go to Ireland, I would. So that's,
It's a beautiful place, very peaceful.
yeah, that's
But
because it's one thing I haven't seen.
I'd like to kind of, chime in on that. I don't really care to go back to the past. It was been there, done that.
Hmm.
I'm very I'm very curious about what's happening now in the present because
Yeah,
this is an evolutionary time.
right.
Uh, when there has been the most disruption and dysfunction, some of the greatest and highest goods, civil rights, women's movement, the 60s, the end of wars. So
Right.
through chaos, a lot of times comes great things. Um,
Yeah.
as far as artificial intelligence, it's here. I remember my mother telling me, "Oh, baby, I don't like that Facebook. It's the devil." I said, "But right, but if we weren't in bed with the devil during COVID, do you know what could have happened?"
Yeah.
So again, there's a lot of manipulation. All I ask is that people stay focused and don't get caught up in the distraction because that is the plan, is to keep you distracted. If you're
I
cutting a
know.
piece of cheese and you don't pay attention, you're going to cut off the tip of your finger.
Yeah.
So we have to pay attention. We have to edit and filter and be the kindest people that we are because it's moving forward, and I don't want to get left behind. I'm excited about the future, what's going to happen, because I think that we are evolving into a whole different species, into a
Yeah.
whole different era of um, alignment, more energy, more synergy, not so much embedded in the religious doctrine, but catapulting to the next level. So I'm
Yeah.
excited about that. So we'll see where it lands. I'll see you wherever it is. We'll have this conversation again. I'll say, Sandra, you remember we were on that podcast and we were talking about your books and all the things that are going on? But thank you so much for sharing your viewpoint, your work, your writing
Thank
with
you.
us. I think it's very, very valuable. What would the world be without a story? Now that
That's true. Yeah.
they're taking so many books, they're burning books. Can you believe that? In
No.
2025, they're taking
Yeah.
books out of libraries. They're trying to get rid of critical race theories as if people don't even exist. They're not teaching the children anymore. So again, we have to stay focused. We have to stay authentic and true to who we are and our word. Tell my brains how to get in contact with you, how to purchase a copy of your books, and follow you online.
Yeah. So I am on Instagram and Facebook. I have my website, which is sandrasigfusson.com. And that's pretty much it. I'm on LinkedIn, but that's really more of a business to business thing. It's not for fans per se. And I do a lot of trade shows wherever I can. Unfortunately, I had to cancel all the ones for the States for obvious reasons. Um, but I do have one in Toronto that's coming up in September. So I'm looking forward to that. That'll be the first time I've ever been invited to a Canadian book signing. So I'd like to do more. I always wanted to do more Canadian ones because it's less expensive to travel. But I just like meeting the fans. I really do. I like hearing what they want to hear. I like interacting with them and having lunch with them, and just that whole vibe. And I really find that romance landia is what they call that group set, that and they're really just a lovely bunch of people. They really are. And so I'm very proud to be part of that.
Well, they're proud to have you. Thank you so much for being here on the edge with us. Brains, get your romance together, okay? And if not yours, get enthralled in a book and enjoy somebody else's. It might spark your interest. It might give you some suggestions. I know I've read some erotica that is like, whoa, let me try that.
Go on, girl.
Exactly. So, and get a boudoir picture. Go and do some photography. Contact Sandra. Okay, if you're there in Toronto area, Vancouver, Alberta, anywhere in Canada. Okay, because we love our Canadians here in America. Yes, we do, and we're not going to let anything disrupt that. Uh, I love you guys. Go in, love, like, share, and subscribe. Pick up one of Sandra's books. I'm going to have all of her content information on the back. We're going to run this over and over again. If you have any questions for her about writing, I'm sure that she would love to give you some input. So thank you again, Sandra. I think that you are the best. And I love you, Brains. Have a good day.
Thanks so much, April. I really enjoyed the chat. Thank you.